Well, good morning, folks. This is Billy Trout, Manager of Taxpayer Education for the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Services Division. On behalf of our Commissioner, David Geragino, and our staff in Taxpayer Services and the Department of Revenue, we certainly appreciate you attending today's webinar. And if you're joining us via recording, we appreciate you viewing us as well. We're going to talk about manufacturing exemptions, particularly as it relates to sales tax today. So we're glad you're with us. Uh, with me today, we do have some special guests. I'll go ahead and introduce here too. You see on your screen now our hostess for the day and main presenter, I guess you could say, Katie Julian in our taxpayer services area. And then we have Thomas Meisenzahl, who is a supervisor in the audit division, who will not be taking names for audit today. He's here to be friendly and helpful. Thank you very much. We have our Assistant Director of Taxpayer Services, Dan Vinson, who will be monitoring chat later on with us today. And then, of course, Martha Potter, who is our registration supervisor in taxpayer services. She knows everything about registration. So we're glad that you're with us today also, Martha. So with that, I just want to say again, thank you for taking your time to educate yourself on Tennessee taxes. And I'll go ahead and turn this over to Katie, who will walk you through the stuff you see in front of you right now and then begin the presentation. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Billy, and special thanks to Thomas and Martha for being our subject matter experts today. If you follow these webinars, they may look like familiar faces to you, but happy to have them back and excited to have their expertise with us today. So just a few things before we get started. You see on your screen here, if you have audio issues, really the best thing we have found is to leave and then re-enter the event. That usually takes care of it. If it's beyond that, contact WebEx support. We will be recording, or we are recording today's presentation. All of our webinars are available in our webinar video library. Usually later in the day today, but at least by tomorrow, tn.gov/revenue, and then click on taxpayer education, then tax webinars. Down at the bottom, if you scroll to the bottom of the tax webinars page, you see all of our webinars. We've done 60 something at this point. This one will be available there. We will be offering CPE credit for today's webinar. There'll be a survey at the end as you leave the webinar that will ask you if you want CPE credit. I'll remind you about that again as we are about to leave. But we are not going to be able to get to all the questions, or we never do. If we do not get to your question, or if your question is kind of account specific, we'll share this again later too. You can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov, and then our general tax line is 615-253-0600. You see this QR code here? That is a link over to the a PDF of this PowerPoint. So you obviously can't click on the screen here to follow those hyperlinks, but if you download or go to the PDF, those will be live links, and you can save it for yourself. All right, well, with that, also, chat is closed down while we're going through the slides. We'll open it up about halfway through and we're ready for questions. You can ask a question to anyone on our panel or to the whole panel. We'll open that up again when we get it's about halfway through when we are ready to open up for questions. Okay, so today's webinar, we're going to be talking about manufacturing exemptions. Like Billy said, we're going to be focusing mainly on that industrial machinery exemption through sales tax, how to qualify, the application process. We will be also touching on the business tax exemptions. Of course, in this state, there are numerous exemptions that do apply specifically to manufacturers. Again, mainly the industrial machinery exemption, but also industrial supplies, energy, fuel, and water used during that manufacturing process. There's also a reduced rate on that. Our state does a good job of enticing manufacturers to come to Tennessee, and this is just one of the ways that we do that, is offering some exemptions there. So we will not be talking about the manufacturing or industrial machinery credit for F&E. That's kind of a different thing. We're just talking about exemptions today. You know what? I forgot I was going to do this. I'm not very adept with doing these polls on WebEx, but I wanted to ask of you all, of our participants here. Um, let's see here. How do I do this? Open poll. Let's see if that worked. Um, okay, we got a poll. Basically asking, are you, for all of you that are here with us today, are you a manufacturer, a retailer that sells to manufacturers? Do you provide professional assistance to taxpayers, to manufacturers, maybe CPA or legal or other? I'm just interested who we've got here with us. Good. Looks like everybody's participating. Appreciate that, and I'll let y'all know. Can you see anybody here on my panel? Can you see the poll results, or am I the only one that can see those results?
No results yet.
Okay, cool. Just curious. All right, so moving along here. Billy, are you talking? Because you're on mute if you are. Okay, no. Uh, First off, the industrial machinery exemption that we're going to be heavily focusing on here during this workshop. Qualified manufacturers and processors can purchase industrial machinery and other products that we'll be discussing exempt from sales tax. So who? That manufacturer must be authorized by the Tennessee Department of Revenue to be able to receive the exemption. They'll be given a certificate. How you apply, you see this, if you've got the PDF, this is a link to the industrial machinery, energy fuels, and water sales and use tax exemption. If you, we'll talk more about this, but a sales tax account is required before you can apply for this exemption. And new feature on TinTap, through your TinTap account, once you're logged in, you can actually apply for the exemption on TinTap now. So uh, good news there, but we'll be diving into that a little later. So machinery and services must be necessary to and primarily used for the fabrication or processing of a product for resale and consumption off premises. Again, we'll be diving into that big necessary to and primarily used for is the key there to figure out what you can purchase using the exemption. So who qualifies? The manufacturer is defined as one who engages in the fabrication or processing of TPP, tangible personal property, for retail, for resale and consumption off premises as one's principal business. So principal business, meaning more than 50% of revenue at the location are derived from fabricating or processing of TPP for resale. Also, contractors hired to install industrial machinery for qualified manufacturers do need to apply for their own IM authorization number for each project. So this enables the contractor to purchase the industrial machinery and any installation supplies for the manufacturer's facility exempt from tax. And to apply, like I said, contractors do need, they use the same application, that industrial machinery exemption application, and it is project specific. Manufacturers do not include entities whose principal business is the preparation of food for immediate sale. We get that question a lot. Also, contractors who fabricate and install their products to realty, such as structural steel contractors. Obviously, manufacturer does not include lots of other things as well, but those are just common examples of not considered a manufacturer for sales tax exemption purposes. Kind of changes just a little bit for the business tax exemption. We'll put that hat on later though. How to qualify. So you see here again, here is a link to the paper application. You must have a sales tax account, I mentioned that already, with a location ID for each manufacturing location, for each location. A separate application must be submitted for each. You complete the application in entirety, and I think I'm going to go over to the application here in just a minute and bring Martha on to talk about like the common pitfalls when it comes to this application. I know one of those, Martha, is not completing it, which I think with every exemption and every application we have, that's probably the number one reason it's not complete. But with this application, it's a little different because some of the questions that you have to answer are dependent on how you answered previous questions, so it's a little bit more complex. Also required to attach a list of the machinery and equipment and describe its use. Very important there. Like I said, it's available to apply on TinTap after you're logged into your TinTap account. Out beside your sales and use tax account, you click on additional actions and then apply for sales and use tax exemption. And from there, it'll just prompt you. So with that, Martha, can you join us? I'm going to go over to the application and have you just kind of talk to us a little bit about, let's see, I'm going to get to it over, go to taxes, sales and use tax. Of course, the homepage is tn.gov/revenue. I just kind of flew through that, but I'm going to go through, I'm on the sales tax page here, down to forms, and then look at how many sales tax forms are. There's a bazillion. But the industrial machinery exemption is right in front of me.
Go one down where your arrow is. Up 3.
Oh my gosh, no. Oh, here we go.
Mhm.
Blind. You know, with that, I think I am going to increase my font size, my point size on my computer just a little bit. Maybe that's too much. Okay. Martha, tell us about what you see as the biggest issues with this application when your team and your in your unit is looking at these applications. What are the things that you're having to call the customer, call the taxpayer, or send it back with a letter stating why it's what are you seeing?
A lot of times we're seeing that the entity doesn't already have a sales tax account for the location of the facility that they're applying for. So that's important to know, to make sure that you have an active sales tax account number and location ID for the facility that you're applying for online for.
And that's information they can find if they log into their sales tax account or click on their sales tax account in TinTap. That information is on their certificate of registration, often on that location ID number is going to be on their resale certificate.
Right.
You can find that information a couple different places. Sales tax entity ID that begins with SLC dash something, and then the location ID is going to say location ID on one of those letters that they have specific to their sales tax account. Okay.
Right. Another big thing that we have to send back or contact the taxpayer is line number 7. It states that you must attach a list of machinery and equipment and describe its use. So a lot of times we don't get that information. So that is something that we on a regular basis are having to send back requesting an
They're not
attached
attaching anything at
list.
all, just nothing there. They're not attaching it or
Exactly.
incomplete or some,
Yes.
is that information sometimes incomplete or not, or do you have to send it back
Usually
for other
it's
reasons?
complete. It's just the taxpayers aren't sending them in.
Okay.
Also on line 9, describe the manufacturing or mining process. Sometimes they'll just kind of put maybe one word or, not even a sentence. So we'll send that back sometimes because we want you to describe the manufacturing process. Tell us just a little more. And if that needs to be an attachment, that can also be an attachment with underline 9 saying see attached.
So your team has to, the answer to that question has to be something to where you feel that what they describe is enough information to give y'all confidence that they are a manufacturer. They're taking raw product, turning it into tangible personal property. So enough to give you
Yes.
that, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Another one is on line 10. A lot of times they'll put a percentage of 100 on A and then they'll do maybe 25 on B.
So
Just
we're looking
always
at here, what percentage of gross sales will be from products fabricated or processed? Okay. And then what percentage will be from products purchased ready for resale? Okay. So yeah, that doesn't make sense to put 100 here and 20. Those have to
right.
equal 100, right?
Both
Yeah.
that is correct. Both A and B should equal 100%. So also A would have to be 51% or more than B. So if
To
you're
even
if you're
qualify
feeling
as a manufacturer, at least
correct.
primarily sales products fabricated or processed. Okay.
Correct. Yes. And see, a lot of people will mark yes to this, and we do send it back or we do contact them because they'll mark yes in error
Mm.
9 times out of 10. And that's, do you provide installation services for products that you fabricate or process? That is if you're installing it to real property.
Ah, okay. So
So if
that's
it's,
that example a few slides ago when I said contractors who
yes,
install it, that's not considered manufacturer. Okay.
that's true.
Okay. So you're seeing people click yes there and you're reaching out going,
Mhm.
are you sure? Do you really? Is that
Right.
really what you do?
Now,
Maybe they're
if
confused.
we do, we definitely send it back if they have yes, and
Okay.
right below it, it says if yes, what percentage of the fabricated or processed products will you will install. That's the installation of real property, and they'll give us a percentage there. If that's ever over 51% or more, then 9 times out of 10 they're not going to qualify.
Okay. All right. Section B, on the next page.
Section
This is
B, now that is just where it will tell us if the water or the fuel or the gas or something comes into direct contact with the product that's being manufactured. Now, even if you have this marked yes or no, we need more detail. Like, we're going to ask you, hey, how does this water come in direct contact with um, you know, the product that you're producing? Or if they I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. So we'll just move on.
and we're going to be touching on that here in a little while
Yes.
more about
Yes.
that whole process, and I think this will make more sense then to those
Yes.
watching.
I think
Correct.
maybe one thing to point out here, ladies, would be the reason for those questions is quite simple. When Martha and her team look at these applications, they've got to make sure, number one, they qualify, but also number two, there are special rates, which Katie will get into in just a little
Mhm.
bit too, that relate to the certain uses of these energy fuels. And the designation on the exemption that Martha's team produces is going to be able to reflect what you're putting in the application. So that's why it's important to be really careful about the information that's on your app.
Mhm. Under section C, that's going to be where your contractors that are doing work for maybe a manufacturer, or they're doing work for a county or municipality. Um, so if they're doing work for a contractor to a manufacturer, then on line C and F, you're going to put the I'm sorry, G.
G,
It's
F, and G.
F
Okay.
and G, that's where you're going to put your manufacturer's information. G is going to be the manufacturer's name, the sales tax number, that manufacturer's industrial machinery number, a begin contract date, and an end contract date. So everything on line G is required.
Okay.
So if you don't have one of those, then we're either sending it back or contacting you, asking for this information. Same thing on H and I. Those are basically the same thing, so I'm
Okay.
not really sure why it's out there twice. But if they're doing like wastewater treatment facilities or just a water treatment facility, they'll put the information on H or I. And we would need to know that county or municipality, the agency or department, contract begin date, contract end date. Those are also required fields that, if they don't have the information there, then we're gonna contact you and say, hey, we need this information. Because for contractors, for each project that they're doing, they have to have a separate exemption. So, and they also expire. So once they put in a contract end date, that is when the contract's going to end. That's when we are going to close the exemption for that contractor.
Interesting. Do you ever have to do contractors ever come back and say, hey, as we all know happens, they get off schedule and
All the
that's not
time.
so do they
Yes.
have to reapply at that point
They
or?
don't have to reapply. They can request an extension to where we
Okay.
just go in and we just extend the end date, but they have to have either a change agreement or a new contract that shows the original contract begin date and what the new contract end date is going to be.
Great. And the regular industrial machinery exemption, not the one for contractors, but a manufacturer's
Mm-hmm.
industrial machinery exemption will not have an end date on it. It's
Correct.
valid until that location is no longer qualifies for
Right.
whether they close or whatever. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And
All
then, of
right.
course, the signature and all of that's needed.
Don't forget that. So funny how
Yes.
many people forget that. I do want to call to your attention, even though this is all available to do through your 10 tap account, which I would think would be a quicker, more streamlined process, but you can always also go to the paper form to see the instructions here that breaks down each of those lines and might be helpful to you. So um, anything else, Martha, or the online process? It just I assume it just walks right through these questions the same way,
It
right?
does. It does, and it also allows you to upload, of course, your in list of machinery. So, it looks a little different than the application online, but the same questions are there.
Okay. And that's a fairly new process for us. So
Yes.
learning process for our team. Well, thanks so much. Anything else about
Okay.
the application process that you want to remind folks about or warn people
Um,
of?
those that I've mentioned are basically the main ones.
Great. All right. Well, if you think of anything else, come back and let us know or when we get to the Q&A portion. I appreciate that, Martha.
Okay, no problem.
So moving along here, so we know who is exempt, how they request exemption, the application process, but what is exempt? The next few slides, I'm sorry, I apologize, y'all. They're pretty dull because it's just flat out what is exempt, what is considered machinery, industrial machinery. We'll kind of just fly through these kind of quickly. We're looking at machinery, apparatus, equipment, and materials that are used for fabricating or processing, mining, for conversion of tangible personal property into taxable specified digital products, um, machinery that's used in fabrication of trusses, windows, doors, when primarily engaged in sales of building supplies, uh, county municipality sewage systems and water treatment facilities for water pollution control, fabricating prescription eyewear, a majority of which is dispensed to patients out of state, machinery that is used to package manufactured product, for processing photographic film into negatives for prints or prints for resale, utilized in pre-press and press operations in printing businesses, including plates, cylinders, fluids, chemicals for mechanical and chemical actions or operations of machinery, fabrication of asphalt, crushed stone to be used by contractor in roads funded by tax revenues, machinery for generating, producing, and distributing utilities. Just a few more here, y'all. Bear with me. Accessories and attachments to industrial machinery, repair parts for industrial machinery, installation and repair services for the machinery, hydraulic fluids, lubricating oils, and greases for industrial machinery, pollution control facilities required as a result of fabrication or processing, equipment for moving materials to and from the fabrication process, and finally, computer network, computer software, and computer systems used in the operation of a qualified data center. Now, obviously, there are a lot of things that are not considered industrial machinery. We've got a couple more, sorry, boring lists here of common common things that people think might be exempt but that are not. Okay, foundations that support equipment that does not qualify as industrial machinery. Examples: catwalks, scaffolding. Materials such as roof trusses, pilings, concrete, rebar accessories, mezzanine, and structural steel that becomes part of floors, walls, roof of a structure housing industrial machinery that are not part of a base that supports. I'm just going to say IM. That's how way out of here. Getting sick of saying the whole thing. Formwork, hanger, and pipe supports, cable trays, conduits, and supports that become part of a building housing IM, and they're not part of a base that supports IM. Transportation systems within manufacturing facilities that are not used in the manufacturing process. Concrete or building materials or materials used to form sidewalks or building components in areas not qualifying as IM. Electrical systems that are not devoted to the operation of the IM. HVAC systems designed for employee comfort and for purposes other than product integrity. A well dug or drilled to obtain water, oil, gas, or brine. Equipment used to clean piping or other parts of industrial machinery when it is not used during the manufacturing process. Floor coatings, exterior wall siding, safety showers, piping labels, fire stops, and light fixtures. Labor charges attributed to the improvement of realty. All right, just something to note here, industrial machinery exemption for pollution control facilities. We've mentioned that a few different times here. Qualifying pollution control facilities do not include freshwater treatment facilities, as these facilities are not likely treating water to remove contaminants that constitute pollution. But freshwater treatment facilities still likely qualify for the industrial machinery exemption. This exemption applies separately. The pollution control credit is a whole different thing. All right, industrial materials and supplies. I wanted to bring Thomas in for this when we were talking through this the other day. He had a lot of great stuff to add from an audit perspective here. But to be exempt, actually, I'm sure everybody is sick of me reading slides. Let's just start talking about this, Thomas. Industrial materials and supplies. Tell us about that from an audit perspective.
Okay, so basically anything, the two things that you need to think about when you think about manufacturing is necessary and primarily for. Those are the two big words that we look at. So when it comes to supplies, it must be used within a 25-day period and it has to be consecutive days. And it has to come in direct contact. So people get confused on what qualifies for that. So for examples are, if I'm working on hard drives, or uh, we have a lot of computer chips and circuit boards and different things like that made here in Tennessee, and they need to wear gloves, so it doesn't defect the product or alter the product. So those would be counted for industrial supplies. Things that are required and come in direct contact. Now, the flip side is this does not cover safety or comfort of the employee. So if you're welding, your welding helmets, your welding gloves, your steel-toed boots that you make your employees wear, none of that covers. Your safety vest, none of that is required in making the product. So you need to ask yourself, is this required when I make the product?
Not necessarily required for your safety, but required for the actual product.
Correct. Correct.
I'd like to jump in there and just get on or stay on topic of what Thomas is talking about, because we get these questions by email sometimes, and it is really important to know that there's a lot of stuff that manufacturers do. I mean, obviously, it's a very complex operation. You've got quality control, you've got warehousing, you've got everything in the whole wide world involved. And what Thomas is saying here is that which is integral to the creation of that manufactured product is typically exempt. Okay. But the others, things that obviously manufacturers need, that you've got to protect the employees. You probably need some air in there for the employees when it's super hot, different things like that. You might need different things for your storage and all that. Well, clearly you need it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's exempt, and that's what Thomas is saying there, and that's a pretty important distinction to make.
Yeah, that's a good point, Billy. Now if it's required for the product, like um, these certain companies that make, because we just keep growing and growing and growing in technology, and circuit boards has been a big thing that we've been looking at recently. But like the static floors, like that's required for the product, so you could potentially get that exempt. Everything from installation to the parts to everything, but it has to be required. It can't just be for the safety of or for the product of. So it must come in direct contact, is the biggest thing to think about. And that also, do you want to get into tools and equipment and stuff like that while we're on this topic?
I think it would be helpful. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you get into equipment and tools, it kind of follows the same premise. It's got to be in contact, not necessarily direct contact, but it has to be used for the manufacturing process. So a lot of things that we run into is, obviously you're going to have your maintenance and repair people that come out and repair the equipment. Well, if you buy 6 DeWalt drills and you need 5 of them for your assembly line and one goes to your repair shop, only 5 of those are tax exempt, because those 5 are used for it. The other one is used for just repairing, which doesn't count. So you got to make sure that you ask yourself. I mean, we talked about this the other day. We could spend hours on just these two conversations. um, so the biggest thing you got to ask yourself before you say, yeah, it's exempt, play 20 questions. What's it used for? Who's using it? Does it come in direct contact with the product? Is it going to affect if I have this tool or not to make that product? Is this just a convenience or a safety measure? So there's different things you need to ask yourself when we get into questions like that. Is
It's
it
way more complicated than just saying, "Hey, Thomas, are gloves exempt?"
Oh yeah.
Well,
So
you got to have these 20, ask yourself these 20 questions first, right? Or at least 5
so
or so.
like we said, the biggest thing is to remember, is it necessary and primarily for? So,
Right, right. Well, thank you for all of
yes, ma'am.
that. We always love hearing things from an audit perspective because your boots on the ground, and you see what people are confused about firsthand. You're seeing it all day, every day. And I
Yep.
could see where with industrial machinery, I could see where there would be some areas of confusion. Hopefully, we're setting some of that straight with efforts like this, but love hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to let you guys know that I forgot about our little poll. So, of the attendees that we've got in here today, 51% of you that are here are manufacturers. 6% are retailers selling to manufacturers. 14% are professional assistant CPAs, attorneys, etc. And we've got about 12% are other. I don't know who, I don't know, what are y'all doing here? I'm glad you're here with us. That's good. 23% did not answer. So now I feel better about doing these polls. I need to do more of those. That's fun. Okay, so moving along here, we're going to switch gears into energy, fuel, and water. Now we've got exempt energy, fuel, and water, and then here in a few minutes we'll talk about reduced rate for these. If you don't qualify for the exemption, or if the usage doesn't qualify for the exemption, it still might qualify for a reduced rate. But if water, electricity, or other energy fuels purchased by a manufacturer are used exclusively in the manufacturing process and come in direct contact, that's key, come in direct contact with the product being manufactured, it's exempt. All right. First off, the water, electricity, or energy fuel must touch the product with no intervening barrier between the two. Electricity qualifies only when the electrical current is directly applied to the product being manufactured, such as electrolysis or induction melting, where an electrical current flows through the product, heating the product to a molten state, common in foundry operation there. So regarding electricity, if either of those two, if the electrolysis or the induction melting, um, if either of these processes are used, the manufacturer is entitled to the exemption because the electricity is deemed to come in direct contact with the product being manufactured. Back to that whole concept, is it coming in direct contact? On the flip side, though, an electrical current, this is just an example of something that wouldn't be exempt regarding uh, electrical. If electrical current that is converted to thermal energy through a heating element and then transferred to the product being manufactured by the heating process, unless that product is glass, uh, does not qualify for the exemption because the electrical current itself does not come into direct contact with the product being manufactured. Somehow there was a little carve out for glass there at some point in the history of the laws regarding this, right? A little bit more about the exempt energy fuel and water. Gas, fuel oil, coal, and other energy fuels qualify for the exemption if they come into direct contact, again, direct contact with the product being made, or if the chemical energy resulting from the chemical reactions occurring through the process of combustion or burning comes in direct contact with the product being made. Lots of science here, y'all. Kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's not necessary for the flame or fire created as a result of the burning to come in direct contact if the chemical energy produced does. This really does. All this kind of takes me back in time to like high school chemistry. Um, must be able to demonstrate that water or energy fuel is used exclusively in a qualifying manner. Um, the best way to do that is to have it separately metered, y'all. And I think Thomas could probably attest to that from from an audit perspective. If it's all if all the water and all the energy in the facility are on the same meter, how are you going to be able to say that it's used for the manufacturing process and not for employees, for example? So separate meter, I think, is key there. Um, a few other exemptions for energy, fuel, and water. Any water or energy fuel produced by the manufacturer or extracted from its own facilities. Electricity used to generate radiant heat to produce heat-treated glass. And natural gas used in the production of primary aluminum, aluminum sheet and foil, and aluminum can sheet products. Got a lot of that going on in this state. All right, so now we're going to kind of switch gears just a little bit and talk about a special reduced rate for energy, fuel, and water. So a qualified manufacturer can also qualify for reduced rates on the purchase of energy, fuel, and water used in the manufacturing facility. For energy fuel, it's a reduced state rate of just 1.5 and no local tax. And on water, it's the reduced state tax rate of 1% and a flat local tax rate of 0.5. Thomas, tell me more.
So, just one question that we get all the time is manufacturers don't know this or don't want to go through the hassle. All you need to do is once you're approved through Martha and her group that you are a manufacturer and you can prove that you get the reduced rate or no rate, all you do is go to your local utility district and apply with them and give them your manufacturing exemption certificate, and they will get you set up.
With that separate meter and
Yep.
stuff, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, we haven't covered it yet, but location, 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 um, that will deem a lot of it. Just because you have four different buildings, does not mean that all four buildings qualify or even the entire building qualifies. So we look at the whole kit and caboodle, where's it going? Is it touching? Are you just using it for your bathrooms? Are you using, the water for your restrooms, for your kitchen, whatever? It's got to touch the product. It's got to be used to create the product, like we said before, necessary and primarily for. Electric is the same way. Yes, I know it's sometimes more of a pain, but if you want the reduced rate or even the total reduction of tax, sometimes we got to go that little step further. But the biggest thing is make sure that if you do qualify and if you do get it, you take that up with your utility district and they'll set you up for it.
Good advice there. Thank you.
Can I mention one thing here too? And Martha, if you want to chime in on this too, This is location based as well. So Martha, don't you think that they'll need to, be real specific in their application process on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we get that question every once in a while. The electric company's denying this because my
Mhm.
facility is two numbers down, street address down. So
Mhm.
you need to be talking to Martha and her bunch about getting you a qualifying certificate that's going to reflect that so you can go back to the electric or other energy company and get your reduced or no rate on that.
And now location is going to be based on what we call a situs. It is an actual street address. So at that one street address, Thomas was saying you may have a few different buildings. Well, and they may, this building over here may be for employees. This is for the manufacturing process. That's for the separately metering, maybe even the same on one building, but they might all be at one location, one address. All those buildings, they can all be under one location. It's where the address changes, even if it's just right next door. If it's a different address, that's a different location in terms of needing its own exemption application and certificate.
Yeah, so each location needs its own certificate, even if they do the same thing. So the four things that we look at when we look at location is, are the buildings physically connected? Do all the locations have the same address? Are there buildings on the same tract of land? And then are the buildings separated by a public thoroughfare or public access road? So those are
Okay.
four major things that we look at when it comes to defining locations. And then do they meet the definition of manufacturing for that location? So you might have, you know, two locations that do. One's your office, two are your manufacturing, one's your warehouse. Um, so you gotta we get in deep in that. And research and development is a different product. I know we're not going to cover that today because that could be a whole different topic. But there is a research and development application out there. You don't have to be a manufacturer to get a research and development application, but they do get different benefits and different things, and they do not fall under they're not lumped anymore
Hmm.
underneath manufacturing.
Often some overlap there. Probably a good idea to we'll do
Yeah, we could do
well,
one on
many years ago we had a webinar about
research.
R&D, but
Yeah.
might plan another one. Probably a good idea. Okay, y'all, we're gonna switch hats here. Switching over to talking about the some manufacturing exemptions for business tax. All right, and that is business tax and a business license does not apply to manufacturers who qualify for the industrial machinery sales tax exemption. If you qualify for the IM exemption on sales tax, if you have applied and been approved and you have your certificate for industrial machinery exemption, you are also exempt from business tax and business licensing. That's your local business license from your city and or county. So just a few examples here. That includes quarries, dental labs who make teeth from raw products. Now, this is just, this is very spelled out in our law, okay? It includes recyclers that turn recycled products into new product, like scrap metal dealers. It does include breweries, but kind of a caveat. If dominant sales are retail and not manufacturing at any particular location, they will be subject to business tax. So that's just that 50% rule there. Um, it does include cabinet manufacturers building stock cabinets, but custom cabinetry is not or is not going to be considered manufacturer. Just a few more things here about the business tax exemption. You must be engaged in an activity that's under Division D of OSHA's Standard Industrial Classification Index. I've got a link to it there if you've got the PDF, or be primarily engaged in fabricating and processing tangible personal property for resale or consumption off premises. And again, just like with sales tax, you qualify for the exemption on a per location basis. More than 50% of gross receipts must be derived from sales of product manufactured at that same location. There's a specific letter ruling that I linked to there that is relevant to that topic. Um, Sales of manufactured products must be made from the manufacturing location or from a storage or warehouse facility located within a 10-mile radius. That 10-mile radius, including that in, it's kind of a fairly new. I think that law, it was 2023, I think, that included that 10-mile radius there. The location does include any adjoining buildings and any buildings on the same parcel of land combined, making up a manufacturing campus. But again, as soon as that address changes, that's another location which would need to, therefore, again, qualify for the exemption in itself. If a business qualifies as a manufacturer, sales made from the qualified location of items not manufactured at that location but incidental to the business's sales are also exempt from business tax and business licensing. Just a few resources to share with you here. We have a ton of sales tax rulings on this topic. There are, just like Thomas was saying, kind of 20 questions for each thing. Well, there's a link to all of our sales tax rulings in the grid that will come up. Just type in the word industrial and you'll see, I think I don't even remember how many there were. There were just so many. If you are a manufacturer or professional support for manufacturing, I would recommend that you take the time to see some of those, read some of those rulings just to make sure. And they're very interesting. A link over to the sales tax manual. There's a whole chapter dedicated to manufacturers. Our business tax manual, chapter 8, is on exemptions and exclusions. There's a portion in there talking about the manufacturer's exemption. Just a link here. I know we said we weren't going to talk about it, but the industrial machinery credit through F&E information about that is in chapter 15 of our F&E manual. Here are just a few of our help articles regarding industrial machinery as well. So I am going to go ahead and bring everybody, Billy, Martha, Thomas, come back in. We are going to get to some questions. We've got some time here. Let's see. Hold on. Attendees can now send your questions to our panel.
Right. We'll wait for those to come in. Thank you, Katie. You did a great job. James is asking, can we have a copy of the slides? They're already on the website. And we put a link out there earlier, but we can repost that link for you.
I will do that right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
There we go.
Brian is asking Thomas about the concrete trucks. That's really interesting too. Let's talk about that because a concrete truck is not a concrete truck is not a concrete truck.
Goodness.
And I'm laughing because Thomas is smiling too. And so talk
Okay,
about that for
concrete
about
trucks.
4 hours. Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about concrete trucks for a long time. No joke. I would need more information before I could give you a yes or no if it's exempt or not. A lot of it depends on the truck. If it's a front end truck, if it's a front spill truck that we charge more money for, those could potentially qualify. A rear facing truck does not qualify. I will tell you that right now.
It's essentially because the product is being
Yeah.
created on the truck.
Yeah, the product is being created on the truck, and
versus being hauled as a completed product and dumped. So that's the difference.
So please feel free to reach out. We could get we could get definitely more specific on that. Let's see what else we got. What is tax? Oh, there's so many questions.
I know they're flying in here. It's hard to even keep scrolling here.
And like Katie said, we'll probably have to just pick some of these. And then if you guys want to email us with some other ones later, you're welcome to do so.
Okay, so Karen asked, we are a manufacturer of products used in the manufacturing of TPPs, so we are exempt on all materials and packaging supplies, correct? Based on your question as long as you manufacture everything now where you get into packing supplies, the packing supplies has to accompany the product. And you cannot bill it separately. So if you bill them separately for pallets, the packaging, the bubble wrap, the I know we get into chemicals. If you start billing them for the barrels and stuff, that is that is not exempt. So you got to be careful on that.
Andy's asking about logistics and trucking companies that transport for multiple manufacturers. Do they qualify? I'm not sure that's the case. What do you think, Thomas?
No, because you're just transporting.
Yeah. Now they may be exempt on their equipment for interstate commerce.
I was just
Yeah,
thinking
As
that.
far as that goes.
Yeah, you could do interstate commerce, but no, there's no. The only real equipment that's going to qualify for transportation of manufactured products would be like a forklift, which I know we didn't get into, and that's always Billy's favorite topic.
Forklifts,
But if you
yes.
have a forklift, yes, they can qualify. It has to be used to move the product within the manufacturing process. You can use it to take it from the raw goods stage and move it to the manufacturing process and move it around and then move it out to your storage warehouse. But that's it. You know, if you're only using that forklift to move it off your truck and into storage and then move it from storage back onto a truck, it does not count. So you got to be careful with that. If you use the forklift in the manufacturing process to move it around your plant or facility, the forklift counts, the fuel counts, the parts count, everything counts. So we have a manufacturer that had us come out and do a plant tour one time, and he had four forklifts, and uh, only one of them actually counted, so he changed up his whole process and painted a line on the floor where the manufacturing process started and ended, and he changed
Wow.
forklifts. So just so his accountant could bill it correctly.
I've heard of different manufacturers too marking the forklifts so that the operators would choose the right ones for the right purpose, and even using logs and stuff like that
Correct.
that basically demonstrate to an auditor that it was for a qualified use and that kind of thing. It's very precise. It's very interesting.
Oh yeah, it's very specific. Thomas asked when you talked about the rule of reduction of electricity, energy is only used to touch product. No, if the electricity is used to run the machine, it's at the reduced rate.
Because they're manufacturing clothing.
Yep. So your sewing machine would count as industrial equipment, but the electricity used would be at the reduced rate. On the separate address rule, our building across the street, which is also part of our manufacturing process. So,
Hey, Thomas, I
yeah.
lost your audio for a second there. I don't know if anybody else did, but could you repeat that question?
Which one?
It's
One you're
from
reading right
it's
now.
from Jeanette
Oh yeah,
on the
Jeanette.
separate addresses, and do you need individual exemptions? And Martha had talked about that earlier, and you do.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, 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 yes.
So Jessica said, where would you consider the beginning of the manufacturing process? Upon receipt of materials, I work in the ethanol mag,
Manufacturing.
Manufacturing
manufacturing
business.
business.
Yeah.
Some states do not consider the beginning of the manufacturing process until the corn goes through the hammer mill.
Mm. I'd have to look at. It's where you start to change the product. So when you start pulling stuff off, when you pull it out of your storage area and you start to change the product, that's when the manufacturing process starts. When you start to change or alter the product. That's a really good question, though.
It is.
I've never gotten to ethanol. That'd be fun.
Just
I'm
a
a geek
question from
about
Alan here.
manufacturing.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I'm a geek about manufacturing, so
You are. I'm so glad somebody is. Oh, I just started a question, then it jumped on me. I don't know if that's happening to the rest of you on this panel. I need to
yes.
pop out the chat. That might help. There's a question about a 10 tap question from Sam. Why do I have two accounts for sales tax? There's one for sales and use and one for manufacturing. I was previously told to ignore or put 0 under the manufacturing. That's just the way it looks, right? Martha, in 10 tap, if they've got an exemption.
Yes, 10 tap is looking for a percentage on both of those. So if you just put like if everything that you're manufacturing is and you're not purchasing stuff to resell, then the 100% can go in the first box, but on the second one, just put the percentage sign and or if you have to put in a number, put 99 in A and put 1% in B to
Okay,
get through
good to
it.
know. Good to know. We're kind of inching towards the end of our hour here. We have time to maybe go over a couple more questions, and then I've just got a few more slides.
Thomas Lauren had a question. Can a contractor purchase machinery and equipment tax-free when they receive the manufacturing exemption certificate? What do you think about that?
Hmm. It depends. So the biggest thing when you get into contractors using a manufacturing exemption is when they are working on a project. It is a third party coming in to work on the project on behalf of the manufacturer. Typically, your manufacturer is going to purchase the equipment and your contractor is coming in to install it or different things like that. There's a lot of times that we run into a contractor that would be purchasing the equipment. Now they can. I'm not saying they can't. But basically it just extends the outreach of the arm of the manufacturer to the third party. So instead of the manufacturer doing all the work, they hire somebody else to do all the work. Um, so you got to be careful with that. You got to make sure. Just remember the two things. Is it necessary and primarily for manufacturing? I'm not saying they can't, but you got to be careful with that.
So here's a question from Diana. To clarify, I was asking for a phone number other than the general tax line. That brings me to, as we wrap things up here, it's ways to follow us and ways to contact us. And yes, Diana, there actually is a line to our registration group, and it is similar to this general tax line, but it's 615-253-0601. Is that right, Martha?
It is, yes.
Okay. And emails sent to revenue.support@tn.gov regarding any of this information will get routed to the correct team. And any of your questions that did not get answered, feel free to reach out to us. We had a very active group in here. We appreciate your questions. A larger for a niche topic, it drew a bigger crowd than I was expecting, but we so appreciate you being here with us today, and especially to Martha and Thomas. Your expertise on this topic has been invaluable. One more thing to remind you all of here before we say goodbye. We've got a couple of upcoming webinars. Of course, it's always on the last Tuesday of every month. Next month in September, our webinar is about the natural disaster refunds. And then our October webinar is filing the F&E tax return. That one's going to be a doozy, right? We do have an upcoming new business workshop. We have these quarterly. The next one is on October 8th. You get to that, you can follow this link if you've got the PDF, but tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education and outreach, and then new business workshops. If you click on tax webinars, again, that's how you will register for these webinars and also access our webinar video library with lots of great information in there too. With that, you guys, we have to say goodbye for now. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Martha and Thomas, for everything. So helpful.
Yes, we appreciate everybody's participation
No
today,
problem.
and make sure to reach out to us if we can help you any further. And thanks to everybody who's been involved with our webinar today.
Have a good one.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you
guys.
soon.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.